Well, there are many aspects of his job. And in terms of what he does serving our administrative needs now, I think he does superb. But I have a growing sense after being really almost 4 years now with this organization that there's a disconnect between what we are looking for him to do and what he thinks the expectations are. All politics is local, they say. And in my opinion, CCRC residents today across the country, when they are organized, they are best being served by state associations. The need is to provide protection to the many CCRCs and the residents across the country that do not have a state association now, and some of them don't even have a residents' council. That is the need. Bennett did a superb job of making that happen in Florida. And I have a growing sense that our expectation is that he would take that business model and extend it across the country and make it happen. It hasn't. He's done a superb job in Florida. He's built a wonderful business. But that business has turned into serving a multi-number of associations, all sorts of pharmacy, dentist, everything else. He's an extraordinary capable man. He's got an extraordinary organization. And he's rated one of the best businesses in Florida. I have nothing but admiration for him. And my perception is that he did his best to get us to do some things that are sort of fundamental in running a business properly, strategic planning. But you know, Jack Cummings makes the argument is that we're not ready for that. We're senior people, aging more every day, limited energy.
Speak for yourself.
And I'm 88 years old, you know.
You got me by 13 years. But I'll catch up.
And, you know, it's unrealistic to try to do what we'd like to do and to be dependent upon people of my age. You know, it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen.
You bring up a good question. Theoretically, in the last decade, the average age of people going into CCRCs has gone from 78 to 88.
Yeah.
That's not true in Virginia.
That's not true at our place, is it, Walt?
Well, our marketing director keeps insisting that we have a younger population, and I've asked her 4 times to give me the mean average of the mean average age in the independent community. I've asked her 4 times to compare what it is today, what it was 10 years ago. I'm still waiting for an answer.
The last 14 people that moved into Sunnyside and Harrisburg were all in their 90s.
Yeah.
All in their 90s.
Yeah.
Okay, friends, this has been very interesting. Thank you for getting us started, Joe, with that interesting peroration. And we will now turn back to our agenda. Thank you all for struggling to get back here on time. I realize it was not quite possible. So here we are. Now we're on our program reports, and the next report is the report of Lifeline. We've received in the mail a very nice written report from Marlene. Marlene, do you want to get us launched by giving us a little walkthrough of that?
Okay. We continue to enjoy good response to our bi-monthly 12-page newsletter. There's been a huge jump in the number produced each issue from the range of 1,300 to 1,400 to 2,200. This increase is based on membership extra copies requested for recruitment, as well as a large number being used for Project Reach Out. The cost per piece is about 54 cents plus mailing. The mailing costs vary because some CCRCs get a drop shipment and and somebody in that place puts them all in all the little cubbies. Quantity shipments to officers and those needed for recruitment. There have recently been strong recruitment initiatives in Washington State, Ohio, and in Indian River Estates in Florida. One aspect of the cost that NACRA should consider addressing is design. Currently, the way NACRA is, the new Lifeline is printed, uses a very expensive software which is very challenging to use. So we're paying somebody to do the layout and this really professional look that we're getting. We have relied on the current editor for 5.5 years. And it would be a nice savings if a new editor could be recruited who has layout software skills. We acknowledge with gratitude the regular contributions from Jack Cumming, Bob Nicholson, as well as our president's column. We will be adding a new regular contributor from Ingleside at Rock Creek who will write on health issues, and we receive frequent submissions from Ed Peliquin, former Leading Age New Jersey staffer. It is very helpful to the editor to receive copies of your local CCRC newsletter, so please add me to your distribution if I'm not already on it. It was gratifying to read in the latest Deerfield Matters, which is our resident publication, 2 references to Lifeline articles, the President's column and Jack Cummings' work on financial stability. And as an added bonus for coming to this meeting, I have the latest issue of NACRA, Lifeline, for your edification, and for some of us to have copies at our booth.
Very nice.
And I particularly call your attention to page 11. The fine print is because there are 99 new members listed on it.
Isn't that nice?
Isn't that phenomenal? And there's also a little box about the leadership of life memberships, which I think you will find very enlightening. Ruth, you got a challenge to catch up with us.
I know. I saw that and I thought, oh my gosh.
Okay. Thank you very much, Marlene. Are there any comments on what Marlene has said or on the material in the written report?
Just to thank Marlene for consistently producing such a fine product. It is absolutely magnificent.
Absolutely.
But I need a successor.
Yes, Marlene has given us a gentle hint in the written report that 5.5 years has gone by and 60 issues. Did you say 60 issues? That's a lot of issues. So we do want to, we anticipate with regret that Marlene can't carry on forever, but I guess Marlene will be relying on you to sort of make a recommendation to us. You have now a team of proofers. We have Jennifer, who is doing the Ask and Share column, and so, you know, we'll need all of you to sort of put your heads together and think about a succession plan. Are there any other comments about Lifeline?
Is it expensive to add the green front?
It costs something, yeah, it costs. It's only on the
And we
front.
don't, there's no other color in it.
No.
Just black and white.
Yeah, would it matter for black? I don't think it would matter for black.
I don't- But it, you know, if there's a savings involved, it might make sense.
How much extra does it cost?
I do not know, I'll have to find out.
I just love that.
I think the main cost is this designer. We have the way it's been printed, the Bennett's organization employs a graphic designer. When I've done a newsletter in the past, we just use Word and, photo offset, and that works just fine. So it does help to have a letter house to do the mailing.
Right. Yes, Joe.
My recollection is that in the past we talked about advertising, seeking advertising and Lifeline to help offset the production cost. Where does that stand?
Nothing has been done as far as I know.
Is it worth pursuing?
If you have the time.
Lots of pros and lots of cons through the years.
You think Cigna will advertise?
I'm sorry?
You think you can get Cigna to advertise?
Well, yeah, that was one of the things I suggested to them, that it was viable for them and us, that this would be ideal way to advertise their products. And we want to promote that ourselves. Here's all the bennies that you get by becoming a member with NACRA. And I'm also hoping that they would, in their general advertising and promotion in communities, advertising their products and giving an endorsement to the CCRC lifestyle. Because Cigna's been long committed to this whole idea that's advocated in CCRC living, active lifestyle, maintaining health, prevention of disease.
You've gone well beyond answering my question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, are there any other comments about Lifeline before we move on? Friends, I'm thinking of an 8:30 adjournment, so let's all keep that in mind as we measure our verbosity.
I think Lifeline speaks well of our organization.
It was brought to my attention that one CCRC
I'm
in
sorry,
Florida,
could you start again?
it was brought to my attention that one CCRC in Florida, the CEO challenged the FLICRA people for putting the FLICRA newsletter in the internal mailboxes. He called it solicitation, and that's against the law in the state of Florida.
That's just getting a newspaper for goodness sake.
Okay,
Do you think he has anything to stand on?
I have no idea, I'm not a legal expert on Florida law.
My experience is that the executive directors are in charge of their communities, and what they say is the law. But it's not, whether it be back up in the courts is a different matter. But their authority seems to go unchallenged.
It wasn't this new issue that you're talking about, was it?
It was in relation to the last line from no, it was the FLICRA interconnection newspaper that was sent out to and on the back, there is a place for people, if they want to be a member, they can sign their name and send it into Tallahassee and become a member. Now, is that solicitation?
Well,
It's a
doesn't
legal
sound like it to
question.
me, but.
We get all sorts of people like that from all sorts of charities and stuff that don't tell you anything, just ask for money.
On your internal box.
And it's the internal box.
Oh, you mean the cookies, yeah.
Well, I mean, we have an informal rule at Pennswood Village, since we have 425 activist residents who each have 5 favorite charities, that we don't solicit each other.
Yeah.
But that's not a legal thing, it's just a decision of the community not to harass each other.
I don't see it as solicitation, I just think that they want to do what they can, if they don't
Yes.
want to do it, they don't have
That's
to.
right.
And no one is pushing them or twisting their hand to become a member.
Right. Thank you. Okay, shall we turn, thank you for that wonderful report on Lifeline, and thank you for your wonderful work. Can we turn to NACRA University website, Jack? I don't know if you have anything to report.
Well, yes, we continue to update it. We just made 2 additions. One was a course, a Shakespeare program given by a resident, which is, I think, very interesting. She makes Shakespeare accessible to everybody. We also received a contribution from Air Force Village West that had 3 health articles. One was on memory care and cognitive issues. One was on glaucoma and dry eyes. And the third was on medications for older adults, what you should be leery of. At Ruth Walsh's initiative, she asked that we put a brochure together to promote it, and we did put that brochure together. And Bob Nicholson, who's again not here, but he has roughly 200 copies of it that are going to be available. In addition, Ruth, with the help of her friend Kate Waterman, has redone it to suit themselves. They changed it to be, well, I guess, larger printers. Mainly, she thought larger print was essential. So there are two versions of the NACRU brochure, which will be available for anyone who wants to see that.
Is it available on the internet?
The brochure,
Yeah,
I had it printed through Vistaprint, but you could print up a supply. You mean the brochure is printed, so you could put in another order.
Can I get 200 copies to put in the residence mailboxes?
Yes, but I'll send you the instructions. You have to pay for them. I paid for the 250 copies. I paid $100. So,
And Stonebridge made
Ruth-
us 500 copies that we
And-
brought with us, and that was free. But it was amazing to me as I visited throughout the communities, how many people didn't even know about NACRA. At the Connecticut Concord meeting, they showed Jack's videotape, or I guess it should, whatever the film is. And it described all the things that are in NACRU, and all these people said, I didn't know that. And so that's when I called Jack. I said, we got to do some kind of advertisement to let people know all the things they didn't know. And it's been wonderfully received. And I thank you so much.
Ruth, does the new brochure also have the cost of annual and lifetime memberships?
No.
in
This
it?
has just to do with NACRU. This is its very own little brochure.
this is not a sales
This is
pitch.
not this is
No, I'm speaking of the other
The
one.
other brochure is here. It's going to be distributed tomorrow. And it does have the cost of the
As a
membership.
membership enrollment form, right. Oh, okay. Are there any questions about NACRU? That's really wonderful. It's a wonderful service,
Thank you.
wonderful deliverable for consumers. Now, on future programs, we're going to hear from P, but first let me just mention that the ideas on the table, which haven't advanced very far toward realization yet, is a consumer's guide for people shopping for a CCRC, which there is floating around an anonymous consumer's guide.
There's one done by Connecticut,
Okay,
and that's online.
Yes, it's online, and there's probably in total 5 or 6 consumer guides. New
okay.
Jersey has one. I can't recall the others, but there's a great number. And
Okay.
the only question I would raise is to whether or not there's, what kind of need you're filling if NACRA produced its own.
That's right, maybe
Because,
we don't need one.
The Connecticut one, 90% of what's in the Connecticut one is applicable in all states.
Fine.
And
On,
it's even available on the Department of Social Services website now.
In NACRU, we have a page for consumer guides,
Right.
and there's quite a variety of them there. One of which I happen to have written, but with input from the board, but we have questions and answers for prospective residents, quite a lengthy document. The NACRA board felt that it was too long and that it raised too many questions because there's a consensus among the board that you can't discourage residency and that raising questions might discourage them. So that has remained dormant. But whenever I've gotten an inquiry from somebody looking, I share that, and they all come back and say, wow, this is useful because when you're looking, that length is not as imposing. So you have one ready at hand if you want to use it, but the board has been inclined toward inaction.
They're very similar to an article recently in the Wall Street Journal which listed, I think, 10 things you should ask if you're going to a CCRC, and exactly the kind of thing that
Can you dig that out and share that with us?
I think I can.
Yeah, I have a copy of that. I gave him a copy,
Okay.
the Wall Street Journal report, I gave him a copy of that question and answer, and that was part of the source for the article in the Wall Street Journal.
Well, I think the question.
I didn't mention NACRA because the board had been negative about the thing, so I just do things like that on my own.
Fine. Joe has raised the useful question of whether there's a need for yet one more guide. I guess what we have to discuss in the future, not tonight, is whether a guide by NACRA would have some meaning, you know, if we consolidated the best of everything, would have some meaning to consumers that maybe something that is sort of state associated would not.
What is needed and can be helpful is a source within NACRA that they can go to if they have questions. I'm among those that objected to the length of Jack's guide. I think that a guide that is brief and to the point, but lets the reader turn to a source within NACRA to get answers and publicize that is what's needed.
Okay. So this is something that the board will discuss in the future. I'd like to resurrect the disallowed document that Jack is talking about. Joe acknowledges regretting its length. I remember regretting not the substance of the questions that it raised, but a stylistic tone of cynicism, which I felt was more a matter of style than of substance, that maybe could be doctored without destroying the valuable content. So that was my reaction.
Yeah, I may just keep it for myself, though.
That might be quite fine to do.
Because NACRA may not be the best vehicle.
Right. So we can consider all these things in the future. I don't want to, we shouldn't spend a lot of time on that. The other thing that I do want to mention, however, in terms of future program possibilities before we get to Pete's list, is that we're still seeking, with the help of the Financial Soundness Committee, some measure or instrument through which consumers can assess the relative financial strength of different CCRCs. And we have not yet found the magic formula, but we are still seeking it.
Are we continuing to discount gap altogether as a measure? Because if the thing is in a positive gap position, then by accounting standards, it's considered viable. If it's in a negative net asset position, by accounting standards, it's considered impaired.
Right.
CARF, CCAC, continues to accredit impaired communities on a gap basis.
Right.
So if we were simply to say, if you're gap impaired, you're impaired, that would be a great service to consumers who are now paying entrance fees into communities that are already impaired at the time they move in.
Right. So that might be a step forward.
Well, I don't mean, I mean, you may dismiss that as being cynical, but I don't think it's cynical to state the damn truth.
Right. No, that's
As
not.
long as you can back it up.
Well, you can absolutely back it up, because to the extent that gap is valid, if the balance sheet, if the liabilities are greater than the assets, on an accounting basis, you're impaired.
Right.
It's
You
as
mean
simple
like
as that.
NACRA?
Pardon?
You mean like NACRA?
Yeah.
Well, NACRA is, I don't know that NACRA has burned through its net worth yet. These are communities that have burned through their full net worth.
At the meeting I was at on Friday, there was a lot of discussion about benchmarks for measuring financial soundness as part of the residents' rights. And there was no agreement in the room. You know, you can state it one way, a ratio of debt to equity, but there may be other factors that negate what appears to be a bad number. It is a very complex and difficult thing to tie down.
Right.
What you're describing, Joe, is spin. If you go to a political thing, one party spins it one way, the other party spins it the other way. People who have CCRCs that are impaired spin it as having no meaning. By
Well-
GAAP standards, accounting, which is the gold standard in this country, right or wrong, and there are problems with CCRC GAAP, by that standard, if your GAAP liabilities are greater than your assets, then you're an impaired entity.
Well, we could debate this, and I don't think
Okay.
it's going to be productive, but among those present was Bill Thompson, whom I served, who's an actuary, and I served with him on the board for a number of years. And I have a lot of respect for his opinion. In fact, we're thinking now ways to bring him to be able to address our residents, to bring them up to date. So it isn't easy, you know.
Okay.
There
So-
are arguments on both sides of this.
So this gives everyone present an idea of the complexity of this problem, but nevertheless, we have a type of community, a type of service that we all value and esteem, and yet we have to acknowledge that large numbers of people are signing up when there is no consensus about how to assess its financial
Yeah.
qualifications. So it's simply a very complicated product, and the matter of assessing financial soundness is elusive, and we of all people have to work on it, because I think we have the interest of the residents at heart, and we are the only ones who do. Talk about another deliverable. I mean, who else is going to take this? I mean, the providers will take one thing, the providers with a positive asset will take one approach, the negative. We are the only ones who will take the residents' approach, and we have to do it. So this is a work in progress, and we need to make progress on it, but that's in the future. Okay, I mentioned the things I know about. Now, Pete has asked if he could mention some future program ideas.
Quick story for you. I was a basketball official in college, in law school, and every year the coach would take time to tell us about the new rules and all of that. And at the end, he would hold up a coin and he'd say, "All right, what is it?" Well, we all said it's a quarter. And he said, "Okay, heads or tails?" Well, we all said heads. And he would say, "I see tails." Now, which one of us is correct? Well, I think that's something to consider, even with financial records. You're going to find some lawyer that's going to say, "Hey, you doctored these and came out in a bad way, and we've got damages." Well, enough said. We in Virginia are heavily involved in two issues that I think have potential for selling NACRA nationally. One, the Chesapeake Bay is a unique place, and it is under assault. The dead zones are getting bigger. There is runoff coming in from New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, Virginia. And some of the rivers bring in residue from dairy farms, from farmers using an awful lot of potassium and other chemicals. And it's a genuine problem for the bay. It kills the grass, it kills the small fish, and the dead zones are just that, dead. Nothing can live in them. That's a real problem for us because the Chesapeake always has cleansed itself. Oysters clean out an awful lot of debris and bad things in the water. and the oyster supply is diminishing, even though now we're going to oyster farming and some other things, but the water itself is in serious trouble. One of the concerns is that EPA has put out some guidelines as to things that farmers can do and that you and I can do in our yards. Some of the problem is that we've got more asphalt than we had grass before. And so the water isn't going into the ground and being purified in that fashion. Well, EPA, with the support of all of those states that I mentioned, has come up with some hardline rules as to making sure that the Chesapeake doesn't become a dead zone in its totality. The problem is that 21 states have their attorneys general suing EPA for starting those regulations. And the states include all of the ones that are represented here, mostly in the West. Alaska, California, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Utah. They're all afraid that EPA is going to come in and clamp down on those water supplies in those states. And so the state's attorney generals have filed suit against it. I think this is an area where NACRA can take a stand. It's not something that, because it affects all of us. We are all in it together. And the Colorado River used to happily run through to the Gulf. And now it disappears around Sacramento.
I'm not touching this issue.
Okay. And it's drawn down by, in Arizona, through an aqueduct system. That's how you can have cotton and citrus and all those good things that come out of Arizona, including, of course, fountains, which 4 drops of water go up and only 3 come back down because it's a desert.
Pete, can I interrupt for a second? This is really fascinating, and I'm very much on board with where you're going, but I'm wondering how this relates to our mission.
Well, one of the things I think that we can do, each of us could query your own Attorney General and ask for information as to whether he is a party to and a participant in the lawsuit against EPA, and if so, why?
Yeah, but I think the problem is, it's the same as the challenge that we had at one time when we had a person who was advocating that NACRA should take a position on gun control. Now, it's true that gun control would affect residents if they got shot. And we had a murder in the CCRC where I live. So it can be a very real issue. But it's not at the core of the CCRC living thing. It's a political matter that is of common interest, but it doesn't really fit within the core mission of a residential community of aging residents, unless they want to become politically activists. And if they do, then they would go off in a different direction and become something other. You know, Consumer Reports at one time was known as an unbiased organization for testing products. Today, it's an advocate for a single-payer healthcare system, and it's become a political entity. We've avoided having NACRA become a political entity by taking contentious questions. And since I do live in California and I do know about the water situation there, I can assure you that it's widely discussed and that much of the information you're giving, I'm not sure where you get it from, is not the same as the information that's shared in California.
Okay, fair enough. I'm a believer that one of the ways that we can get membership is to stand for something. And standing for better understanding of CCRCs, that's great, but I don't know that that's going to attract many people to our cause. The second area that we're involved in Virginia is pushing for non-political redistricting of districts within the state. Now again, you may say this doesn't affect nationally. Well, I think it does. I think one of the problems that we have is basic non-action in all levels of government, local, state, and federal. And part of that stems from gerrymandered districts that put all blacks into this district and all Republicans into that district and so on. And the incumbents face very little chance of being overturned. Now, maybe that's going to change this election, but I'm not sure it will. Nonetheless, there are a number of activities that are going on in order to push the idea of a non-political entity to redraw the districts, federal and state. It's going to have hard going through every legislature because they don't want to do it.
Well, we just did it in California. They took it out of the hands of the legislature. They put it into the hands of nonpartisan citizen commissions, and they invited the citizens to participate in the redistricting. The citizens were not interested, the politicians were, and nothing changed.
And what you say, Peter, is something that I philosophically fully subscribe to. And knowing the culture of the community in which I live, Seabury, most of the residents would agree. 3.5 miles away is another CCRC, Doncaster. If NACRA took a position supporting the issues that you're talking about, I wouldn't be surprised if Doncaster would cancel their membership.
I'd like to elaborate a little bit on what Peter had to say. We just, last Monday, had the annual meeting of VACRA, the Virginia Continuing Care Residents Association. And 5 of the residents at Goodwin House put on a skit on the Chesapeake Bay. Now, there were 72 people here, and by the time they finished the skit, everybody was caught up in this cause. The second speaker was a speaker from Lynchburg, Virginia, and she talked about redistricting. She's another enthusiastic person. When she finished, everybody was so enthusiastic about it that they voted to donate $250 from our treasury to the 2021 objective of getting the lines in Virginia redrawn. What Peter's point is that everybody at this meeting was caught up in these causes. Now, let me tell you, I have really tried to sell a Bill of Rights to people, and I have really pushed for the
On laws.
yeah. And I can't get people caught up the way that people were caught up in that meeting on Monday. And the people who were at this meeting were guests as well as VACRA members. So, where we had the meeting, a lot of people came who aren't members of VACRA or NACRA. And the thing about it is that they ended up thinking, wow, VACRA's really but this is a wonderful day. We got a lot out of this day.
Interesting. So you mentioned the Chesapeake Bay, and you mentioned the gerrymandering. Do you have another issue?
Yes. The Green Spring will be happy to play host in the spring, in March, for whatever it is you want to do.
Right.
I've talked to the executive director, and she said Green Spring will furnish all the refreshments for the meetings.
Wow.
Not meals, but, you know, the same as out there, soda and, I don't know, cookies or whatever. Now, the plan that I have seen includes on Saturday, I guess, meeting from 2 to 6 or 7. I can arrange for a buffet lunch and a buffet dinner if you want. I meant to bring all the paperwork and I forgot to do it. It's sitting on my dining table in the apartment. But, you know, I've got a list of the catering department and all the things that they can serve and come up with. And what I need is some guidance. Do we want to have a buffet lunch on before the meeting? A buffet dinner after the meeting? You know, that's the first question.
This is, I should have reported to the board that Peter and I have been in very good communication about the very kind offer of Green Spring to host our March meeting so that we can dovetail with peak, leading age peak. And there are some details that we have to work out. It seems quite clear that Green Spring can host almost anything that we are likely to require. And I don't think the whole board would want to do this, but we're going to have to make, I think the only stipulation that Green Spring has is that they have to know in advance what we're going to want. If we're going to want 75 extra people for lunch, they'll have to know in advance. If we want to have 75 extra people for dinner, they have to know in advance. So we'll have to work out in the, you know, probably the officers will work out a format for the meeting, and Green Spring will have well in advance the arrangements that we'll need. Pete has been wonderful in eliciting the support of the administration of Green Spring, and I think we can look forward to a very satisfying meeting there. So, Pete, I don't think we want to get 26 people into these kind of details.
Okay,
but
but
it's
now
good
that's,
that you brought it up.
we're talking first about Saturday.
First about Saturday, second about Sunday.
And the
Right.
Saturday meeting will be just the board and members.
That's correct.
So it'll be a reduced number, we figured maybe 20, 25.
Something like this, right.
Yeah. Now, the Sunday meeting starts at, I don't remember.
We haven't decided that yet, that's why you don't remember.
Okay, it's going to be a longer meeting, open to the public,
Right.
and the room where we would meet on Saturday is right across the hall from the theater. And the theater can seat 250 or more, so we can have our meeting there without any problem. We can have it in the convention center if you'd like, but the theater is a little bit, I don't know. And then, since many of the people there will be Green Spring residents, I don't know that it's necessary to, unless they want to pay to participate in a buffet or something. Whatever you want to do. I just need some guidance in as to, on Sunday, do we want to, that's a brunch in all the restaurants at Green Spring. So we can do that. We can have the brunch in the room across from the theater.
Thank you so much,
whatever
Pete.
you
We're
want.
not going to discuss the details of this meeting right now, but
You just got to
I
remind me,
sent-
after it was at Westminster, Ruth asked me to write up a guide, which I did, and
I sent that to both
Voting
Peter
members.
and
so that gives you
Yeah.
some of the, because I went through the same logistics
and I sent them both exactly the same packet of
Yes,
materials.
it's a good, excellent, excellent.
So there are some decisions to be made about the format, which we will do, but I don't want to use time now with 25 people to discuss administrative details, if that's
Okay,
okay.
well, let me just tell you a little bit more about what's available. We have a metro line that goes from Springfield on into DC. I'm not sure where Leading Age's meetings are going to be.
DC at the Wardman Park.
What?
They're gonna be, the Leading Age will be at Wardman Park Hotel.
Okay, I don't know
That's
where
in-
that is
that's-
in relation to the metro, but,
It's by the
It's
zoo,
right next to it.
right by the zoo.
okay, well,
That's his march.
the, I guess, 6 or 7 or 8 hotels and motels in the Green Spring area give a discount to people that come in connected with Green Spring. So I can make available a list with telephone numbers and what the costs will be. I suspect that most of them have shuttle service to the metro site, metro station. And I would expect that most of them, when we talk about being associated or affiliated with Green Spring, would be able to shuttle people back and forth to Green Spring. Because I'm assuming, Jack, you're not going to drive. There will be a lot of people from Virginia that will drive, but most, I think, will fly in, and so the use of public transportation makes sense. So I just I throw that out. I'll furnish the list of hotels and motels, and as I say, they're all right in the area, and they all have a rough affiliation with Green Springs, so I would assume that they all have shuttles to the metro station and can swing by Green Spring also.
Good. Pete, I'm struggling to sort of contain this particular agenda.
I understand.
I want to assure people that I'm totally convinced that Green Spring is going to be a wonderful venue for us to have our March meeting for all the reasons Pete has described. There are many
And we want to
advantages.
thank Pete for
We want to
all the
thank
effort
Pete
you're putting into
enormously for his
making it
efforts
happen.
on our behalf. And I want to assure you all that the officers and I will be making the decisions necessary so that things will work well at Green Spring. But in our last half hour now, I think we want to move the agenda forward.